Hello, welcome back to Plant Boy. My name is Cade, and today we are going to be talking about the string of pearls. A string of pearls care guide was actually the first video that I released here on Plant Boy back whenever I had 2 subscribers, and we now have over 2,000, which is so awesome. This has exceeded my expectations, as I'm sure you've heard me say, but I don't want to make this video sappy. So let's focus on the matter at hand here and talk about how to care for your string of pearls. The string of pearls taxonomical name is Senecio rowleyanus, pronunciation unclear. This plant is indeed toxic to dogs, cats, and humans as well, so keep that in mind if you have any young kids or pets that may be getting into your houseplants. The string of pearls is native to the drier regions in Southwest Africa. So keep that in mind as we go through this care guide. As you may have heard me say before, in order to make your plant the happiest, you really want to do your best to mimic its native environment as best you can within your home. Let's start out with light. The string of pearls does prefer a lot of bright and direct light. You could certainly get away with putting this plant into some direct light scenarios, specifically if it is early morning direct sun or late evening direct sun. Through the summer months, I wouldn't expose it to any kind of afternoon sun, as it is very likely to scorch this foliage. The more bright and direct light you can give this plant, the better. Now, in terms of watering, I treat this like a regular succulent. I've heard people say that you should keep it a little bit more on the moist side, but that has not been my personal experience. I know when I need to water this plant based on visual cues. If you let this plant dry out too much, you're going to see the pearls start to kind of shrivel and wilt away. That is an indication that you are not watering it frequently enough. However, a sign that happens before that indicates some dehydration is that these pearls kind of lose their sheen almost and start to appear a little more dull and not quite as satiny, we'll say. So if you notice that these guys are looking a little more matte or not glossy, that could definitely be an indication that it is time to water before it gets a little too dry. And of course, like all houseplants, you want to make sure you are watering your string of pearls less in the off season or the not growing season, which in my area is going to be from like September to around May or April or so in the Northern Hemisphere. In terms of the soil substrate that you use, you want to make sure you have a very well draining mix, as you would with cacti or any other succulents. Something that is very high in sand or perlite to increase aeration and help water flow through the soil is ideal. You could also use something that is more chunky, such as an orchid bark or kind of pebbles to increase that drainage as well. Just make sure that you are not using any kind of denser soil mix or a regular potting mix that can hold onto moisture for too long, causing these roots to rot. These plants do not prefer moisture stay around the roots for long periods of time. In terms of the style of pot that you have it planted in, I prefer terracotta with the majority of my succulents. And the reason being is that terracotta is actually porous, and all of the excess moisture within the soil is going to be wicked out through that terracotta and evaporate off of the surface of the pot. So you kind of mitigate any chance that you are overwatering this plant, or at least that excess moisture is really sticking around the root system. As for humidity, we did mention earlier that this plant is native to Southwest Africa, specifically the drier regions within there. So, as with many succulents, this does prefer a more dry climate, something not super high in humidity. I wouldn't say that it would, from my experience, be a very finicky plant in terms of humidity. I humidify my whole house, especially in the winter, and I haven't noticed any kind of pickiness in terms of this plant. So again, given that this plant is from Southwest Africa, in terms of temperature, you want to keep it relatively warm. Definitely an ambient temperature that humans prefer would be ideal, somewhere between above 65 degrees, no higher than 90 to 95 max, is going to be very beneficial to this plant. In that same token, you want to make sure that you are keeping this plant away from any cold drafts, so away from a door in the winter seasons, And you also want to make sure that you are keeping this plant, as well as the majority of your houseplants, away from any kind of heat registers, whether that's a radiator or a space heater or a heat vent, as the hot, dry air that is pushed out of those areas through the winter months does not go well with tropical or subtropical or really any houseplant. There's a common misconception that succulents don't need fertilized. They certainly don't need fertilized as much as your very foliage-rich plants such as ferns, rubber trees, pothos, or things like that. However, these plants do need nutrients revitalized into their soil or put back into their soil just as any other plant does. You can buy specific succulent or cacti fertilizers that you can actually just put on here. A lot of the big brands have specific ones that you can use that are already pre-made as well. Something a little higher in the phosphorus rather than the nitrogen or potassium I've heard is ideal for these plants. In terms of timing of fertilizer, only do so through the growing season, whatever those months are for you. And I would recommend maybe every month or month and a half to 2 months would be sufficient through the growing season. So for propagating this plant, you have a few different options. Regardless, it is going to be based off of a cutting. So if I just squeeze off a piece of a stem here, I have a cutting of this plant. I can do a few different things with this. The first thing that I could do is actually just place the nodes of this stem onto some soil, keep it moist, and allow the roots to establish and create a whole new plant. You can find the nodes of a stem or a petiole on the underside of each of these stems, which we can see here. So as long as you have those touching the surface of any kind of soil and keep that a little moist to begin with, those roots will send out down into the soil. It will establish itself, and then it will eventually start to push out new growth. You can also propagate just by putting these cuttings into soil. In order to do so, you want to remove the top inch or two, and by top I mean where you took the cutting from, the top inch or two of pearls. So now we have this kind of bare stem here. This is where we took the cutting, and then this is the bottom where the new growth is being pushed out. I can actually just stick this new end into some soil, and roots will push out from any nodes that are inside of the soil, and it will eventually root and start to grow. The last option that you have for propagating any kind of cuttings that you have of your string of pearls is going to be through water propagation. It's going to be the same exact thing as the previous method. Take a cutting, remove the top inch or two of those pearls, and then just stick this end into some water. You can even get some pearls into the water, and wherever those nodes are, roots will send out into the water. You can watch them grow, and once you have a decent amount of root growth, between 1 to 2 inches of root growth, you can then transfer that into a soil media and then watch it grow from there. So if I just wanted to put this cutting into soil, I have that inch or so of pearl growth removed, and I'm just going to stick this down into a hole in the soil that I created and then anchor it into place. So now I have this little cutting that I took off in the soil, and I'm going to give this plant a good watering, as long as it's not being overwatered, and just allow it to establish itself over time. Propagating these succulent type trailing plants, such as your string of pearls or string of bananas, is a really great way to fill out the top of your plant if it is starting to get a little bit bald due to a lack of sunlight hitting the top of the plant. So if you have a string of pearls or a string of bananas that is getting a little bald up here, it is most likely due to a lack of sunlight hitting the top of the plant. And you can fix that by propagating some of those strings and wrapping them around back into the top of your pot, or water propagating them and transferring them back into the pot to fill it out. This guy has actually been battling mealybugs for quite some time now. It's a sensitive topic and I don't want to talk about it, but I haven't noticed any other kind of pests on my string of pearls besides a mealybug problem that I have been kind of battling for a while now. It hasn't been an infestation, but I just see 1 or 2 pop up every now and then, and I take the initiative to dab them with a little bit of alcohol or hydrogen peroxide on a cotton on a cotton swab or something like that to kill them. But I will be breaking out the heavy-duty guns here with some kind of systemic pesticide to try to fix this problem, but that's a video for another day. So yeah, everyone, we covered everything you need to know about the string of pearls. I hope that you found this video educational and informative, and I enjoyed recreating my first video. If you want kind of a good laugh and to see how far this channel has come, it would be really interesting to go back and watch that first video that I created, that string of pearls care guide, and see how far we've come here on the channel. Again, we just reached 2,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for the continued support. And if you're new here, hopefully the opportunity to, engage with you and maybe teach each other something along the way. All right, everyone, stay tuned for the giveaway results that are going to be posted this Thursday, September 24th, 2020. I will be posting a video revealing the winner of said giveaway and reaching out to them and providing them with that $200 nursery credit to a nursery of their choice. Hope to see you on the next video. Bye, everyone.